Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, please give a big Mad Monster Party 2024 welcome to Lou Diamond Phillips. Well, let's go ahead and begin. I have a few questions I'm going to ask you, so we'll start off there. So, you've had a very successful career both as an actor and also as directing as well, too. What first inspired you to want to become an actor, and at what point did you also decide you wanted to direct?
The acting is probably due to a genetic defect. No, I did. This is bizarre. I think the statute of limitations has run out. I did my first play in 6th grade. I was with a bunch of friends who were really precocious, and the teacher was very, very smart, and she set us to writing a Christmas play, and we weren't that imaginative, so we ripped off Peanuts. I co-wrote it with a couple of my friends, and I gave myself all the best laugh lines. I played Linus. And, you get a laugh on stage, and it's like, hello. Wow, this feels good. This is like warm honey all over my body, and so then when we got restationed in Texas, I did the University Interscholastic League, where you compete, a lot in drama. And I was winning a lot of awards, so, parents, that positive reinforcement is a good thing, and if your kid has dreams, get behind him on that. So and then I majored in drama at the University of Texas at Arlington, and actually had my first professional gig when I was 19. So it was kind of destined to do it. And the thing is, when I was in high school and college, I wrote and I directed. I produced my own plays throughout college, and when I got to Hollywood, it just felt like the right thing to do, and I kept doing it. And I've pursued the directing a little bit more in the most recent years, and strung together a lot of really, really fun credits.
Yeah. Cool. Now, of course, one of your you have a number of very famous roles and iconic parts you've done over the years, but one of the first roles you did was also one of the roles you're most well known for, and of course that's in La Bamba, playing Ritchie Valens. Can you talk a little bit about being cast as Ritchie and then taking on that role?
That was lightning in a bottle. Everybody goes, well, how do you make it? It's like, well, you get freaking lucky. I was working in Dallas, Texas at the time. I was teaching acting at a place called the Film Actors Lab with a wonderful, wonderful man named Adam Rourke, who was basically my film mentor. And some of you, I see nodding heads. Adam was like one of the biker dudes in the late 60s. He did a lot of films with Dick Clark. He was a contract player. He'd worked with John Wayne. Yeah. He opened up this acting school that was really just, brass tacks, man. It's like, here's how you hit your mark. Here's how you match. Here's how you play a master as opposed to a close-up, all this stuff, right? I got a call from my agent's assistant, and they got it totally wrong. At this point, I was actually supporting myself as an actor. I was getting enough gigs. I was doing theater, a lot of day player stuff, a lot of independent films in Texas, the Dallas series, at one point. But they said, there's this musical on the life of Frankie Valli. And I went, Sherry, okay, I can do that. Yeah, I can do that. And I go downtown, and I think the reason they got confused is the audition was in a legit musical theater, and I got there, they handed out the sides, and I was like, oh, this is a movie about Ritchie Valens.
Yeah.
And it was like, wow, first, and then second, what the fuck are you doing here in Dallas, Texas? And they were doing this national talent search. They saw like 600 people. And they put me on tape for both Ritchie and Bob, and then flew me out to L.A. a week later, and the story goes on and on. But eventually, I got the role. And it's funny, though, because Adam, my mentor, he's from Brooklyn, he goes, Lou, there's not a snowball's chance in hell you're going to get this role. You go out there, though, and you kick their ass, and maybe you can play the drummer. Took all the pressure off.
Yeah.
It was fantastic.
Yeah. Cool. So what was after being cast, what was that like, taking on that role and bringing it to life?
It was probably the most emotional experience I've ever had on a film set. And that's saying a lot after 40 years. And La Bamba's, what, 37, 38 years now? I mean, first of all, the family was there every day.
Yeah.
So there were lots and lots and lots of tears. And I was an unknown kid from, from Texas.
Yeah.
You know, playing an obscure Mexican-American rock and roller who was a, asterisk in Buddy Holly's story, you know. But Taylor Hackford, tough director, brilliant director.
Yeah.
But he's our producer. And Luis Valdez is our, writer-director. But on the third day, it's my first musical performance. And I got to sit on the swing in the backyard, and I don't play guitar. I had to learn all of the fingering by rote in a week.
Wow.
For 16 songs. I was scared shitless. And on the third day, and I didn't know I was going to be sitting on a swing, so I'm trying, I was like, oh, God. And Taylor literally walks up to me, and he goes, you either knock this out of the park, kid, or we're sending you back to Texas.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so every single day I'm in fear of getting fired, So it was a wonderful experience. It was also probably one of the most frightening experiences I've ever had. Please don't fire me. Don't fire me.
Was there any, or if there was, what was kind of the pressure as well to taking on that of someone who actually was?
I mean, the biggest
person?
the biggest pressure is from the family.
Yeah.
Always from the family. I mean, my God, they lived through this tragedy, and they're, it's so funny. I mean, Irma at one point, we were doing the apricot picking sequence, and she just, tears in her eyes. She looked at me. She goes, "This is our life. This was our life." There's a famous story of Connie approaching me the night that Ritchie got on the plane. And Taylor and Louis had asked the family not to come that night. It was the only night they asked them not to come. And they were calling me Ritchie the entire time. Bob Morales picked me up from the airport when I went home to pack a bag because I didn't know I was going to get the role. So I had to go home the Friday before we started shooting when I got the job, and then pack a bag for the couple of months shoot. And Bob picked me up and took me to the house that Ritchie bought Connie. And I slept there the first night.
Oh, wow.
It was intense. But Connie came up to me the night we were doing the getting on the plane sequence. We shot it in Burbank, incredibly warm. This is the summer. They got all this fake snow. They're blowing plastic snow everywhere. I'm wearing a freaking fur coat and sweating my ass off. And Ritchie's sick, so I'm sitting in the makeup chair out on the runway, and they're making me look sick. And Connie comes up, and I know something's wrong immediately because for 6 weeks she'd been calling me Ritchie, and she said, "Lou, can I say something to you?" And I thought, oh boy, what did I do wrong? I said, well, of course, Connie. And I stood up. And no sooner had I stood up than she collapsed into my arms and went, "Why did you go? Why did you have to go?" And just, it was massive catharsis. Massive catharsis, 30 years in the making. Because she was 12 when Ritchie died, so she felt it intensely.
Wow.
But for the family, it was such a, such a painful, joyful process of reclaiming their family's legacy, and that's probably the most important thing that came out of that film for me.
Right. What was your first experience watching the final cut of the movie?
I remember being amazed. I mean, when you're making a film now at this point in my life, I can make a film and go, okay, this is going to be really good, this is going to be okay, this is going to suck. Which is sad because you can tell are the people you're working with know what they're doing, did they have enough money to make it right, all of this stuff. This was my first big Hollywood film, and so I was like, it feels like it's going to be really good. I think it's going to be okay. It's going to be And then I remember they showed it to us at a screening room at Columbia Studios, Columbia Warner Brothers at the time. And I remember sitting there. And when the lights came up, I was just stunned. I was stunned because I thought, oh my God, I think this is going to be a huge hit, and just the weight of all of that, kind of hit me, and it was, And yeah, it went from there.
Now, of course, you had a number of memorable performances in this period, and in the 80s and 90s that are legendary still today. Another very big film that you were a part of was Stand and Deliver. Can you talk a little bit about being cast in that and what that process was like?
His body's decomposing in my locker. This is a ridiculous story because I got paid scale for La Bamba. So about $6,000. I gave half of that to my mother, like because Ritchie would have. And so now I'm in Hollywood. We finished filming in late July, maybe early August. As I said before, I'm an unknown kid from Texas playing an obscure rock and roller. The La Bamba budget was only $6 million. And it was a negative pickup through Columbia, meaning that they didn't pay for the movie. Yeah. They just pick up the negative and then they do the publicity. So this did not have Blockbuster written all over it. And so I couldn't get arrested. Nobody else was going to give me another job. Everybody was sort of waiting to see. And La Bamba took a year to come out. Yeah. So come December, I'm almost out of money. I might have to move back to Texas. Yeah. And as luck would have it, I landed an episode of Miami Vice. And that episode of Miami Vice paid me as much as La Bamba did. And Viggo Mortensen played my partner, and Annette Bening was the girlfriend of the bad guy. Because that's what Miami Vice was back in the day. Everybody did it. And I had one scene with Edward James Olmos, And Eddie had done Zoot Suit with Luis and Danny Valdez. So he was aware of La Bamba. We did the one scene together, and Eddie goes, when we finished, he goes, "What are you doing next month?" I know, you want to have lunch? He goes, I'm making this film. It's a very important film. You need to be in this. And he gives me a number, and he says, when I get back to L.A., call the number. Yeah. And it was Ramon Menendez, the director of Stand and Deliver. Yeah. And that's how I got in that movie. Wow. Yeah. Because Eddie, gave me the nod, which was fantastic. Yeah. I don't know what the title of it is now. When we filmed it was called Aguadilla. But I just worked with Tom Muska, who wrote and produced Stand and Deliver again. And he is now a professor of film at the University of Miami. And he wrote a beautiful sort of John Steinbeck meets film noir movie that he co-directed with his son Alex, who's 25. Yeah. So we just did that last summer. So hopefully we'll see that in film festivals this year.
Nice. Yeah. Cool. Yeah. I was gonna also say too. I know so Edward James Olmos is really big on helping get word out for actors and for filmmakers. Everything he has. Every year in Los Angeles the Latino Film Festival. Yes. So he's a really big proponent of getting up-and-coming actors and filmmakers their shot. Yeah.
Well, yeah, and I did another movie with Eddie, a movie called Philly Brown, which was Gina Rodriguez's big break. Gina Rodriguez, Jane the Virgin. Yeah. So, and that's a wonderful film. We went to Sundance with that. Both Gina and I won a number of awards, and Eddie is in it. He produced it, and his son Michael co-directed it with Youssef Delara.
Can you talk about, so you mentioned directing already, and so so just from those two movies alone, you've been around some incredibly talented filmmakers. How much of that are you taking in, having directed stuff in school and whatnot as well too, but knowing that this is something that you would also want to do, how much of that are you taking in on the sets of those movies?
All of it. All of it. To this day, I use lessons that I learned from Ramon and from Luis Valdez. Yeah. Chris Kane. It was really amazing. Instead of going back to my trailer, I was always on set watching what they were doing. Taking that in. Adam was amazing about and I wrote all of the exercises for the Film Actors Lab. Yeah. So and I was still writing plays, and I'd done a couple of screenplays. I did a terrible movie, which, believe it or not, before I rewrote it, was worse. Called Trespasses, and it was my first writing credit. Yeah. But literally, not just script doctoring. Yeah. I had to go in and surgically figure out how we were going to reshoot about a third of the movie. I mean, funny things like it was 2 years later, and the little girl had sprouted up, so she looked like she looked when we were doing the film. So we put her in a car accident in a full body cast, so that you wouldn't recognize her, you know. But I mean, you know, just the hands-on doing of it, you know, and on a film like Stand and Deliver, the iconic scene where, you know, his body's decomposing in my locker. You notice that's shot from Angel's point of view. And I learned that from Ramon Menendez. It's like you don't just formulaically shoot the thing. Every scene has a point of view. Sometimes it's God's point of view. Usually it's the hero's point of view. At other times it's like, who is the person who is driving this scene? And that helps you design the direction, as it were, you know, of a scene, and not just shoot it boilerplate like so much television is done, you know?
Can you talk a little bit about what your first, the first time you got to direct a feature?
Yeah.
How did that come about, and what was it like for you then stepping? Because you also acted in it as well, too.
Yeah, Dangerous Touch.
Yeah.
And once again, I was doing a lot of writing at the time, so they came to me. Interestingly enough, I mean, I guess they figured if they offered me the director, you know, role as well, I'd take the role as an actor, you know. And I said, yeah, can I take a shot at the script, because I think it needs some work. Sure enough, and they gave me, you know, because I rewrote quite a bit of it, and they gave me credit on it. So there was, you know, I mean, there was a lot of pressure. And even though it was a low budget film, I mean, you know, you kind of have to know what you're doing. And it was interesting. I had certain ideas, and I directed some things that I don't think that they were expecting, and as a result, to put me in my place, the producers fired the DP. And I was like, wow. And then they hired another DP, and I guess they thought they were hiring somebody that was gonna, you know, put a leash on me. And he came in, and after 2 days, I was actually privy to a conversation that he had with the producers. He goes, why am I here? He knows what he's doing, you know, which was nice. Yeah, cool. But it was a great learning process, you know, but not in the art of directing, but in the art of politics, you know. So you got to give a little and get a little from the producers.
Yeah, and a lot of people might not realize that there is quite a bit of studio politics involved behind the scenes and everything.
Oh, 100%. And they, you know, like it or not, man, you know, they usually get final say. I mean, there's a handful of people in our industry who get final cut. Yeah. You know, you got studio bean counters saying, oh, no, cut 20 minutes out. I was like, you know. But, you know, the Scorseses and the Christopher Nolans and people like that, I go, no, fuck you. My film's 3.5 hours long. You know, that's the way it is.